Afternoon, Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest show here on Up the Cherries Store Departments. Now, fingers crossed, we have got 3 more points this weekend against Nottingham Forest. Of course, this show is recorded pre the Forest game, as you can probably imagine. And we do like it up in Nottingham, so fingers crossed that's the way it's panned out. But on Boxing Day, after all the festivities are over, we have got the visit from Fulham. Now, a side managed by Marco Silva, who survived quite comfortably last season. To be honest, they did very, very well. And apart from a moment of madness in the FA Cup, could have gone further in that competition as well. Fulham did start off with a bit of a struggle this season, which was a surprise. However, they have found their shooting boots in the last 3 games, and they've won in the last 2 home games 5-0 apiece against Nottingham Forest and West Ham United. So there is things to be concerned about when playing the Cottagers. We do have a very special guest with us, though, for this Boxing Day preview. And it is a pleasure to welcome onto the show from the Hammy end, Alan Drewett. Welcome to the show, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all good, all good. And thank you for joining us. Of course, this is being recorded pre-Christmas. The game is on the 26th. It's actually being recorded pre the Nottingham Forest game as well. So whatever happens tomorrow, who knows? We shall see. But let's firstly look at last season because we both promoted together. And you did significantly better than we did. There was, a chance. Well, to be honest, you should have progressed a little bit further in the FA Cup. There was a little bit of a moment of madness. But what was what did you expect, firstly, at the start of the season? And how did it, I guess it surpassed your expectations?
It did. But the one thing we had that you didn't was a decent manager to start the season off with. We had Silva, you had, not to mention his name, but you had Parker. I think that was one of the main differences. But yeah, we would have been happy with 17th, especially after the last few attempts in the Premier League. It's not gone as we'd have liked. Probably the best chance we had of staying up was actually under Parker. With 10 games to go, we were level on points with 17th, and we just beaten Liverpool at Anfield. So you think, okay, confidence is high, and we never picked up a single win in those last 10 games. So I think if you'd have offered 17th to any Fulham fan, it would have beat your hand off. But to finish as high up as we did was definitely a surprise. But I think the biggest influence on that season, apart from Silva, was João Palhinha. He's world class. I don't use that phrase lightly, but for me, he is world class, and he could walk into most teams in world football. Just having someone in front of the defence that breaks up play, he's just been a revelation to us. And thankfully for us, in the summer, we kept hold of him, and we've got another task in our hands to keep hold of him in January. But it was a great season. Obviously, you mentioned the FA Cup game, which again, Mitrović decided to go AWOL. It's very rare he did that for us, but it didn't help. But yeah, we could have gone a bit further in the FA Cup as well. So
let's bring it back to the season. A couple of years back, actually, under Scott Parker, because like you mentioned there, you went the last 10 games without a victory. Scott Parker for us was, to be honest, I could see some issues in the Championship when I think back. So there was a number of games. We was beaten by Derby County. We was we drew against Reading. When really at halftime we should have been about 5-0 up. And then, to be honest, because it was we was only 1-0 to the good, they got back in it. They could have easily won that game. And Scott Parker seemed to play this very defensive line, as we saw, against Liverpool in that 9-0 well, annihilation. I try to forget it, but it's part of our history. It's one of those that, we've just got to come to terms with. A 9-0 thrashing in the Premier League is horrid. But was Scott Parker exactly the same at Fulham? Was he just so defensive and just let the teams pick you off at ease?
Yeah, he always set up to not get beat before trying to win a game. And I think that's the case with a lot of English managers, especially a lot of English managers coming through. He was very defensive-minded. It works in some cases, but for the likes of us in the Championship when he got us promoted through the playoffs, and the same for you, we were struggling to beat teams which, if we just let our foot off the pedal for a minute, we should win fairly comfortably. So I don't think he helped himself massively. He seemed like a really nice guy away from football. But yeah, I don't think he'd be spoken about too highly for either of our clubs. And I must say, I'm glad to see the back of him, as I'm sure you are.
Yeah, most definitely. We'll go on to last season because, of course, Mitrović was on fire. He was on fire in that season where he was promoted alongside us. And the thing is, Scott Parker never really played him. It never really got the very best out of him. But Marco Silva, turned him into the player that we knew that he was. Let's be honest, Mitrović, we knew that he had the talent, before he even kicked a ball for Fulham. But, I think he just got the very best out of him. How big a loss is he this season?
Huge. And I think it'd be a big loss for most teams in the Premier League outside the sort of top 6, top 7. He was fantastic for us. He scored nearly 50 goals the season we got promoted. And any team like us that loses a talisman like that is always going to suffer for a little while. For us, we didn't replace him. Marco Silva has done a fantastic job for us this season because our summer wasn't exactly smooth, plain sailing, if you like. There was a few hiccups. We never really brought in enough signings. We brought in 4 main signings, but I suppose apart from Iwobi, that's the one that stands out. We expected a bit more because, as we spoke about, we finished 10th last season. And we actually had a good blueprint to then go, right, we can then see how far we can progress with this now. But losing Mitrović, possibly losing Palhinha, it was all up in the air. But that's just the story of our transfer policy. But yeah, I think we've at the stage now where we did score 16 goals in 4 games. So the hangover is hopefully behind us. Jiménez getting sent off at Newcastle hasn't helped situations because now we're down to bare bones. We rely on Carlos Vinicius and Muniz to score the goals, which we don't hold much hope for. But if we can get a few goals up until the Arsenal game on New Year's Eve, we'll be thankful because we have Burnley first tomorrow, and then you guys on Boxing Day, which is always a tough game for both sides. I think no one ever wins that convincingly, or it's always the odd goal in it. And I feel that someone like Solanke, for you guys, other than Muniz or Vinicius, may actually be the difference on the day, which hopefully I'm wrong.
We did talk before we come on air about the recent form. And of course, we've got Nottingham Forest before we face Fulham at home. And you found them very, very easy going at Craven Cottage, a 5-0 win. And, a lot of people would put that down to, well, Nottingham Forest aren't particularly very good. Steve Cooper was struggling a little bit to find his best side. I think he's been struggling. Well, of course, he's lost his job now, but I think he's been struggling all season to find that best side. But you proved it, only 4 days later with a follow-up 5-0 thrashing against West Ham. And that really signifies how good a manager Marco Silva is, because it's all clicking into place again. And I think, as we mentioned, Mitrović is a huge loss. But do you feel that Marco Silva or the club have spent sensibly?
That's a good question. Sensibly, yes. A bit negative in terms of how much optimism we all had going into the start of the season. I feel we could have done more. It's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
We received £47 million of the Mitrovic fee up front. It's not paid in installments. It was completely up front. And we would have liked to seen a bit more investment back in. But as I said, we spent 18 million, I think it was in Iwobi, 5.5 million on Jimenez. So we are expecting a big January. And I feel if we can get a positive result tomorrow against Burnley and, we take a point, I'm sure, at the Vitality on Boxing Day, it puts us in a good stead for a big push. If we can stay anywhere between sort of 10th and 13th come May, it'll be another very, very good season for us. But we would like to see 1 or 2 additions in January, good additions, but most importantly, keeping Palhinha in a Fulham shirt.
Jimenez, was a player that I turned around at the start of the season, when we was doing our transfer activity. And one of the arguments I made is that if something happens to Dom Solanke, we don't really have that many options up front. We've got Kiefer Moore, who I think is a bit of a target man and probably doesn't really fit the style of Andoni Iraola, although saying that, the other week against Crystal Palace, he did show what he could do. He's a little bit slower though. But Jimenez is a player that I really, really rated at Wolves. A lot of people were against us signing him because it was something that was mentioned. I don't think it was, any strong links of sorts, but you did sign him. And did he take a little while to get going? Because I think he's an outstanding player. I do really rate Raúl Jiménez.
It did take him a while. He scored his first goal, Premier League goal against Aston Villa. It was about 6 weeks ago now. And ever since then, he's kicked on, which we was hoping it would. He looks like a different player with confidence. Obviously, we're not going to get the same Jimenez that was at Wolves. Someone that suffers an injury like that is lucky to be playing football again, let alone expecting him to score you 10 to 15 goals in a season to help you stay up ultimately.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see him playing with a smile on his face. He has got that extra bounce in his step, which he didn't have at the start of the season. I think that extra bounce in the step didn't work in his favour against Newcastle last week when he decided to take someone clean out. But I'm not sure how he got that high. But, you don't want him to lose that sort of side of his game. He likes to play on the edge. He's very attack-minded. And to be honest, you can see how good of a manager Silva is because he's starting to get the best out of him again.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between a good manager and a really good manager is they take players and they sort of take them back to the next level. And Silva's doing that with Jimenez. He links up play really well. He's not afraid to make runs. He's not afraid to put his head in, which is fantastic, especially after the injury he had. Mm-hmm. So for 5.5 million, we can't complain at this moment in time. As I said, it was tough for him at the start. A few Fulham fans were sort of turning against him. And as fans, we sort of expected him to come in as a backup striker to Mitrovic. But as it turned out, he was sort of our main target man. And he was knocking at the door. But it's nice to see him sort of break the duck. And he scored a fair few goals since. But he will be a big miss for us over the Christmas period.
Another player, though, that you signed from Wolves. And this was a signing that, surprised me. And I really, really rate this man as well. Of course, he was on loan at Barcelona for a period of time, and that's Adama Traore. But he's only played 4 games for Fulham so far. Is there much of a reason why that is? Is he not fitting the style? Injuries?
It's all injuries. But that was a signing that just come out of the blue. Yeah. Normally with Fulham, we get linked with a player and then we sign him 3 months later or 6 weeks later. He wasn't even linked. The signing just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There was no transfer fee involved. At the time, we thought great. We didn't expect him to start much. We expected him to be a bit part player. But we've not even seen that. As you said, we've seen him 4 times this season. He's quick. No defender wants to come up against him, but he seems to have a problem staying fit. Now, I don't know if he's too top heavy, I suppose is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
His body's starting to slow down a little bit. He's picking up injuries all the time. But if we can keep him fit, it's an excellent addition for us, and it's another selection headache for Silva, because on the flanks we are quite blessed with the likes of Wilson, Willian, Bobby Reid. Iwobi can play there, Andreas can play there. So it's not an area we're light on, but having him fit and having him raring to go is definitely a bonus for us. And ultimately, it will help him and his score a few more goals, because they seem to have a good connection at Wolves. And I would like to see him fit and ready to go. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen again. But hopefully, in January, we'll get to see him back in a Fulham shirt again.
It's a strange one because he can't be that old. I reckon he's probably about 26, 27 years old. He had a transfer to one of the biggest clubs in world football. I know that Barcelona haven't been particularly doing that great, but at the same time, there's still a massive, massive club, which any player that goes there is quite highlighted, aren't they, really? So it's a shame, that he hasn't really kicked on and, got himself in the position where he can play week in, week out. But you did mention there a player, of course, that was at Bournemouth. He was a player that took a fantastic free kick. There was a number of, goals that he did score for the club. But he's really found Fulham his home, and that's Harry Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a lot of credit, again, goes to Marco Silva. We did sign him for what I think would turn out to be a cheap fee. I think it was just under 20 million. And he's had his issues with injuries himself, especially in sort of last season. But this season, he seems to, again, have just taken it up a level.
Mm-hmm.
He has been making a few sub appearances from the bench around half-time, 60-minute mark, and he just changes the game. He's definitely better coming in from the right. But yeah, I like Wilson. I have nothing bad to say about him. Not scored a free kick yet. Maybe that's the one negative I will put out.
Yeah.
But he's brilliant for us, because
a
lot of people, when you think of Harry Wilson, you think he's quite one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. He gets the ball and he cuts in all the time. But recently, I've seen more and more he is starting to go both ways. He can cut in, he can go down the flank. And yeah, he's brilliant for us. He scored a fantastic goal against West Ham not so long ago. It was probably one of the best goals I've seen live. And he has that in his locker. It'd be nice for us to see a bit more of that. Hopefully starting tomorrow on Boxing Day.
Well, hopefully not against us, but tomorrow, feel free to beat. But well, to be honest, I think you'll beat Burnley hands down. Going back to last season, I want to link it in with this season as well. Is that 2-2 draw up at Craven Cottage? I was there, and of course, we got out the blocks very, very quickly. But it was an outstanding game to watch against two teams that were really fighting for it. Of course, Gary O'Neill was in charge at the time, and he was in that spell where, between that Liverpool game, and this is what a lot of people don't realise, between that Liverpool game and our defeat against Southampton, which was quite some time later, we had gone unbeaten, and every other team in the Premier League had been beaten at some point. But one thing I want to bring it back to is, of course, the defensive side of things. And one thing, we did cut through Fulham quite easily, during that game. At the end, towards the end, I think, if at 2-2, if there was only going to be one winner, it was probably Fulham at the time. He probably had a little bit more legs than us, if that's fair to be said. But, we could have been further ahead. And it still looks like the defence is a little bit leaky at the moment. But, like we say, 2 5-0 wins, what's different between those games compared to some of the defeats that you've had this season? The 3-0 against Newcastle, of course, you conceded 4 against Liverpool. The away form doesn't seem too great, to be perfectly honest. But what's the issues with the defence, and how has Marco Silva shored that up a little bit in those two most recent games? Forget the Newcastle one.
Yeah, we'll try and forget the Newcastle one. But I suppose one of the biggest differences, Reams started off the season, and he deserved to play every minute. He was fantastic for us last season. But Issa Diop got injured against Sheffield United. And to be honest, at the start of the season, the fixtures weren't great. We kept a few clean sheets at the start. We beat Everton away 1-0. We lost to Brentford 3-0 again, which was silly mistakes. But Ream hasn't been in the squad recently. He's been injured. But then even when Ream was in there, we had Bassi come in, who played on the right-hand side, he may as well just have one foot. He's so left-footed, it's unbelievable. And you do miss that right-hand side. I think Tottenham away, we lost 2-0. And both goals was his fault. So we've not really had a settled back four yet. Castagne's been playing a lot instead of Tete, but Castagne's been brilliant for us. But now, especially those two games against Forest and West Ham, we had Tosin, Adebayo and Bassi playing on the right side and the left side where they're meant to be.
Yeah.
And we just looked so comfortable. In both of those games, I never felt like we were under any pressure. I never felt like we'd concede. Tosin was fantastic. And we beat Everton on penalties the other night, where, again, I didn't actually feel like we'd concede. We had Bassi and Tosin. Tosin's been brilliant for us, but he's been injured a lot, and he's only just come back a few weeks ago. But the Newcastle game we can touch on because Bassi was actually ill that game. Yeah. So, again, it's another change in the central of defence. I think when we get a settled back four, we'll be fine. Palhinha can't seem to do it all on his own. So I think give it a few more weeks and you'll see the clean sheets start to come back again, hopefully. But we seem to be scoring again now. So if we concede one, hopefully we'll score two to sort of forget about the one. But no, there's a lot of chops and changes. But again, without Leno, those goals, that negative goal tally could be even worse. So yeah, we'll get there eventually.
Just having a quick look as well at the home and away form. And of course, in the last 6 games, you've won 3, you've lost 3. To be fair, the 3 that you've lost are against Aston Villa, who are flying, Liverpool, who are flying, and Newcastle, who are doing very, very well. But throughout the season, you've only got 3 points away from home once so far. And that's at Everton at the start of the season. Is Marco Silva playing a different style away from home as he is at home, or is he keeping it the same? Or how do you feel that he might be able to mix it up to actually get 3 points away at Dean Court on Boxing Day?
I don't think we played too dissimilar, to be honest. The away form hasn't been great. It's the first time I've taken my son to away games, and we've been to every away game bar one. I'll let you tell me what game that was that we didn't go to. But the Liverpool game, for example, we probably could have won that. We lost 4-3, but it doesn't tell you the full story.
Yeah.
One of the goals, I think, is McAllister. That's the best goal I've seen live. All the goals were outside the box. And with 5 minutes to go, we were winning 3-2. On another day, we walk out of there with at least a point.
Yeah.
It's at the Newcastle game you sort of write off, but all the away fixtures we've had, you look at it and you go Arsenal, Newcastle, Tottenham, Villa, the top 6. So we are, as Fulham fans, expecting to lose it. So we sort of bonus games are a bit sort of negative, bit defeatist to sort of say, but you don't focus on those games as to pick up points. If you pick up a point, fantastic, but you sort of put it to bed as quickly as you can. It's the likes of Bournemouth, Forest, teams that expect to be around us come May is where we need to start picking up points. Everton will finish in and around them, I expect. We beat them. We did it again the other night. So, yeah, hopefully the bad away form will be rectified on Boxing Day. But We shall see.
Hopefully not, but you can save that for the new year. Honestly, don't worry. But
Well, we got Chelsea after you is our next away game in the league. So if someone said to me, we'll lose at Dincourt and we'll win at Stamford Bridge, by all means, open the floodgates, beat us 6-7. I don't care. If it means us winning at Stamford Bridge for the first time in my lifetime, I take it.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. If it makes you feel any better, we've won there a number of times at Stamford Bridge. So it's possible. It's possible. And they're not the greatest side this season. I wanted to touch on this, the Carabao Cup, the EFL Cup. And you are, of course, in the semi-finals. You have got Liverpool. But do you fancy Fulham to potentially win it? Because, of course, the other game is between Chelsea and Middlesbrough. You would imagine that Chelsea would get through to the final. But, I've got a sneaky feeling that you can get past Liverpool.
I hope you're right. To be honest, the last 5-6 times we played Liverpool, it's a mixed bag. I think we've won 2, lost 2, drawn 2.
Yeah.
There's nothing to fear, in my opinion. We'll be playing in Liverpool without Salah and Matip. Why not? Let's just go and give it a good go. We're away first leg, which I think is a slight advantage to us because a night at the cottage under the lights we can make it quite loud, believe it or not. But if we was home first leg, away second leg, I'd sort of write it off. But I just want to see us give it a good go. And I've said if we get through Liverpool, we'll win it. I think we can't beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, but if we could beat them at Wembley, then I'll retire from football sort of thing. But we've never come this far in the Carabao Cup or in the League Cup. The quarterfinals is the furthest we've got. But I don't want to go to Anfield on the 10th of January, get battered 4-0, and then the second leg's sort of a dead rubber. I just want to stay in the tie after the first leg. And who knows after the second leg if it goes to penalties. But yeah, the dream is a Fulham-Chelsea final at Wembley and winning there. If someone said to you, name the team you want to play at Wembley in a final, it will always be them, just to sort of get the bragging rights over them. But yeah, it doesn't come any harder than Liverpool over 2 legs.
No, fair enough. And to be honest, it's always that dream, beating the team that, well, to be honest, it's a double-edged sword, really, isn't it? If you win that final, against Chelsea, I'm talking ahead here, but, if you was to win that final against Chelsea, it would be, probably up there with the greatest days as a Fulham fan. On the spin side, if you lose it, you think, absolutely gutted. It's a bit like England-Argentina. If we got to the World Cup final, it would be a dream. Let's be honest. If we beat France and got to the World Cup final, we would be absolutely elate. Well, we'd be ecstatic, whoever we beat, really, in the World Cup final. But if we got beat by Argentina in the World Cup final, it would be like the world's come crashing down, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, that's it. And the most annoying thing as a Fulham fan is during lockdown, we had Brentford in the player final, who's also one of our rivals. We weren't there to witness that, but we won 2-1. And it was actually a stroke of genius from Parker to get...
Stroke of genius?
That was the only good thing he ever done for us. He worked on a free kick routine with Joe Bryan, and he caught David Raya out to score the first goal in extra time. But that's the one game, I think, if you ask any Fulham fan, they wish they'd been able to go to, it'd be that one. Because, again, we were sort of the underdogs for that game, purely because we had a mediocre manager and they have a fairly good manager in Thomas Frank. And we were going into that game with no form. We were awful, to be honest. But we won that. But if you can give us a final at Wembley against Chelsea in any competition, and if you're going to tell us we're going to win, then it would be probably the best day of any of our lives. If we'd have won in Germany, 2010 Europa League final, I don't think you could ever top that.
No.
But I think beating Chelsea in a domestic final at any time would probably be up there as number one for most Fulham fans.
Definitely. Alan, I'm sure if Scott Parker is watching this, hello Scott. I'm sure I'm sure he's probably just clipped your comments there. You know, the greatest thing he's ever done, getting the better of Thomas Frank. Yeah, to be honest, we stumbled over the line the promotion season ourselves.
So did we. Yeah. And it's crazy to think, like, the talent you had in your squad, and even we had under him, we should never have just sort of creeped over the line. We should have been more than comfortable. The night you came to the cottage, I think it was a Friday night, Solanke scored, I think after about 10 seconds in the second half.
Yeah.
And then Tosin Adebayo scored a header late on. And I think Bournemouth got about 7 yellow cards that game, 8 yellow. I think it was really high.
Something, yeah.
And I felt a lot of sympathy for you, because it was sort of, we knew what Parker would do. He'd come, he'd sit there, frustrate us. And I just think the talent you got in your squad, you should be sort of going head to head with us. But we never saw that. The game at Dean Court was obviously slightly different. But, you know, yeah, we've both been unfortunate in the sense that we've had Parker as manager. I know he's mentioned a lot, but I think it's brought us closer together, the two sets of fans. I think on Twitter, I think Fulham fans and Bournemouth fans, we tend to have a good relationship. It's a friendly rivalry, if you like, the Scott Parker rivalry. But it's solidarity there as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
we've overcome that.
Thankfully. To be honest, if we'd stuck with him, we would have definitely been relegated. And to be fair, to give him some credit, and by all means, Scott, feel free to clip this bit as well. You know, the best part, you know, of his time with us is the first 15 games, where he got 37 points from the first 15 games. Now, if we hadn't have done that, well, I think it would have been playoffs. Well, to be honest, we was dicing with the playoffs, you know, right at the end. It just took that win against Nottingham Forest to actually get us across the line. But apart from that start and that Nottingham Forest game, and probably his halftime team talk, which was quite inspirational, actually. I quite liked it, if you've ever seen it.
He's good with words. I did watch that, and that's what Parker can do. He's very good with his words. It's just, if he can talk as well, if he can manage as well as he can talk, he'd be right up there.
Yeah. Well, the last bit I want to mention is, of course, our midfield is completely on fire at the moment. It's outstanding. Justin Kluivert is in the form of his career. You know, definitely. And that's including his time at Roma and where else he's been as well. You know, Alex Scott is, you know, coming back into the side. You know, it's very, very possible that he'll play in this game. You got Lewis Cook, who's playing that defensive midfield role. The goal for Solanke to open scoring at Old Trafford, you know, he created that out of pretty much nothing. He had no divine right to get to that ball. And Semenyo and Tavernier are being outstanding. And of course, we've got Brooks on the bench. And Brooks, unfortunately, isn't getting a look in because everybody else is playing so well. Oh, and can't forget Ryan Christie as well. So we did mention at the very start Palhinha. I've just butchered his name. Sorry, Palhinha. Yeah, you know, he is a quality player. But he is one against a lot of players playing in some of the form of their lives. Got to be honest at the moment. How does Marco Silva stop those players getting any joy?
By having more of the ball. I think that's got to be the aim. Because if Kenny plays, he's so composed, he's so good on the ball. Having him alongside Palhinha, again, I didn't actually give him enough credit, Tom Kearney. He's probably been the main reason why our form has slowly started to turn around with those 5-0 back-to-backs. But for me, if Palhinha's on form, you've got to be on your A game to be able to have too much joy through the middle of the pitch.
Yeah.
Out wide is where you're going to get probably most of your success. But if we have more of the ball, especially with the likes of Kearney, Iwobi, Andreas, it's actually going to be a good contest in the midfield. I think that's probably where we're both at our strongest. You have the slight advantage in the sense that you have a goal scorer. Ours is currently will be serving his third game of his suspension. But if we can, thing is, Bournemouth have been brilliant recently. I've kept an eye on your results. I've seen the highlights, and it's good to see someone like Bournemouth doing really well now. I think us small clubs, if you like, when put them in a small Premier League club, in that sort of bracket, we don't get enough credit for what we do. So especially your win at Old Trafford the other week was phenomenal. Could have been 5 or 6. Probably should have been 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's always good to see the likes of clubs similar to us in terms of stature, in terms of size, doing really well. Because we're sort of written off a lot with the media. We're not media friendly, if you like.
No, we're not really. Everybody turns around and says, "Oh, Bournemouth," and because of our grounds, that we've got no right to be here and everything like that. It's a load of rubbish. Absolutely a load of rubbish.
I'd rather go to the Dean Court or Sellers Park or Craven Cottage over the Emirates, Whitehall Lane. These bowls, if you like, that are being built now. West Ham, for example, you lose your soul, you lose your identity a little bit. And as I said, my son's only 9. He's been to about nearly 10 away grounds in the Premier League. And his favourite at the moment is actually Sellers Park. He said he's been to Emirates, he's been to Whitehall Lane, he's been to them lot down the road, which I don't like to mention, Chelsea. And Sellers Park's his favourite because it is one of those old-fashioned stadiums. And we're actually heading down to Dean Court on Boxing Day. It'll be the first time he went. He's actually been. The first time I went, I think you beat us 3-1 back in 1998. I think I was only a small boy. We lost 3-1, and not enjoyable memories. But hopefully we can change that on Boxing Day, and hopefully my son gets to see the first win on the road. But it should be a good game and one I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my guests, and it's difficult because, of course, we've both got a game in between. We don't know what's going to happen in those games. Hopefully no injuries from either side. But how do you feel, if this game was tomorrow? So, of course, it's recorded on the Friday. If this game was tomorrow, how do you feel that it would go?
A 1-1 draw. I think it'd be a draw. I want to be positive. I want to be optimistic. But, as good as we can be, I've seen how good you are at the minute. So I think it's 2 very even teams. I think you're certainly in the better run of form, home and away. But I can see it being a draw. And I don't think that would change too much, whether it was tomorrow or Boxing Day. But I just want to see us win away.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Personally, I think, I'm not going to bet against my own team. I'm not going to bet against my own team, as you could probably expect, Alan. I think that we will get the 3 points. And I can't believe I didn't mention him, actually. When we was going through our midfielders, Phil Billing, who is going to get, without a shadow of a doubt, a standing ovation at Dean Court for what he did during that Luton game. And of course, he went straight over to Tom Lockyer, and he won't come out and say what he did because he's quite a shy, reserved lad. But what he did potentially saved Tom Lockyer's life. So he will get standing ovation, and he's a confidence player, and I think he'll build on that confidence, and I think he'll grab one. And I think Justin Kluivert, is in a good deal, run of form, really. I think he's playing some fantastic football. I think he'll probably get a second, but I think it'll be a 2-1 win. I think you will get one. I think you will get a goal back. But it probably does help that Jimenez isn't playing, because I would be worried if he was. like I say, I really do rate him. And I think, once he gets a good run of form, which he was in before he sending off, we'd be in trouble.
It will be a tight game, but I think it'll be a draw, as I said. But I would like to see a 2-1 win myself. But I just want to sort of pay my respect to the Bournemouth fans after the reaction of the Luton game when Tom Lockyer did go down. As a football fan, first and foremost, seeing the Bournemouth fans singing out his name alongside the Luton fans, I thought was a touch of class. And seeing the lap of honour, both teams, I don't know what it was like being there, but sort of listening to everything going on away from the ground and not having any affiliation with either club. I thought as Bournemouth fans, you were exceptional, and seeing something like that, there's more to life than football. Ultimately, thankfully, Tom Lockyer he seems to be on the mend, and I thought both clubs made the right decision to probably call it off after what happened to Tom at the playoff final. But I think something like that on a football pitch, no one wants to see. I think I just think what Bournemouth fans did was a touch of class. And as you said, Philip Billings probably has saved Tom Lockyer's life. And if we can sort of clap you as fans on Boxing Day, I'm sure we'll do that. But yeah, massive respect to Bournemouth as a football club after what you did last week.
No, thank you. And it does mean a lot. It was the moment where everything just stood still. It was literally, you could hear a pin drop at first. As soon as I realised who it was, of course, because I knew the history at the playoff final against Coventry. And when we realised it was Tom Lockyer, it was a moment where it was just a horrible, horrible moment. It was a frightening moment. And I think the whole crowd, didn't want the game to restart. I think, we'd had enough as fans because it was difficult to watch, to take the football element out, a fellow human being in that situation. It was just awful. But Luton fans have been excellent, in their support of Tom Lockyer. Always expected that, but it does mean a lot. And I'm sure it will mean a lot to Phil Billing, because without a doubt, and I really hope that our fan base do give him a standing ovation because he deserves it. He's a confidence player. When he's not confident, he does seem to struggle a little bit. And I think, he wouldn't be upset with me at saying that. But, what he did in that moment in time, he should be incredibly proud of. His dad, Mark, should be incredibly proud of it as well. And it's one of those moments you never, ever want to see when you go to a football match. It was horrible. But thankfully, Tom Lockyer, he's been discharged from hospital and, is on the mend. So hopefully, fingers crossed. I understand from what, speaking to Luton fans, he's going to be at the Luton game tomorrow.
Wow.
So I'm sure that they'll give him a warm welcome back. And, whenever the game, to be honest, I haven't really paid much attention. And to be honest, it was trivial when it was, or what happened to that match after what we witnessed. I'm sure once he comes back to Dean Court, he is going to be getting a round of applause and a warm welcome back from all four sides of the ground. But thank you so much for mentioning that. And it does mean a lot, to all us fans. Before you go, I do firstly, one thing I do want to mention on is that away shirt. That away shirt is beautiful. I come to Craven Cottage last season, and it was one of those moments where you think, I would absolutely love to see our team play in that shirt.
It's not bad, is it?
Nice, isn't it? It's a nice shirt, that one. We've got, to be honest, our third shirt is lovely this year, and this one, it really grew on me. I'm a little bit of a shirt person, with all the designs, but the third one, it harks back to our history, the yellow and navy blue. Absolutely love it, but I would not be disappointed with that shirt at all.
Yeah, we did all right in it last season, I think, once or twice. But no, that shirt you've got on reminds me too much of a Gillingham shirt. We don't like Gillingham.
No, fair enough.
I do like the third one that you won at Old Trafford in. That's smart. But for me, I never buy football shirts. But this one, it just looks different. So you're sort of your everyday modern shirt. So that's why I had to buy it. But it's the only one I have bought in about 10 years.
No, fair enough. I'll get them I'll get all three every season. So yeah,
I do for the kids. But then you sort of go, well,
it's the cost, isn't it?
It's ridiculous now. Like if you buy a child, like even an adult's top with a net, like I never get a name on the back for my kids. If you buy a kit with a name on the back and the badges, you're looking like 120 quid, and you've got 3 different kits, and it's like, Jesus, it does mount up.
Yeah, it does. It does. Before I let you go, you have to tell everybody where they can find the Hammy Ends as well, and a little bit more about what you do on the website.
So Hammy End has been around for nearly 20 years now. We started off producing articles, and up until beginning of last season, we started doing our own podcast, which is called The Green Pole, which you can find on all the major platforms. We're just another fan-friendly site. We're the oldest in terms of Fulham aspects. And yeah, we're always up for coming on and talking football. We love Fulham, we love football. And yeah, you can find us on Twitter. It's at Hammy End. We don't have our own separate page for The Green Pole because it's still fairly new. We're still trying to work out how it works, if you like. But yeah, YouTube's going to be the next stage for us. And no doubt we'll be catching up again, hopefully in the future. But yeah, we're always up for talking football, if you like.
Definitely. And it's been an absolute pleasure, Alan. All the links to the Hammy End and the Green Pole is in the description as well. So please do go and subscribe to the guys' YouTube channel. Please do visit the site as well. And do recollect, I'm pretty sure you've got some match reports, haven't you, from the past on there?
Yeah, there's loads of stuff on the website. We've got the Green Pole segment on the website, which is still fairly new. But as I said, my son is usually with me doing this. We spoke to Nottingham Forest one. It's a gentleman called Mr. Dorr, who is an absolute top bloke. And yeah, my son's 9. He started coming on the podcast with me, so he records with us. We're actually going to do one after this. But yeah, he loves it. It helps him and his confidence, if you like. But yeah, Forest are. I've got a soft spot for Forest purely because of that. So I'm slightly impartial tomorrow.
No, fair enough. Well, hopefully by the time this is released, which will be straight after the Forest game, we'll have beaten them. Mr. Dorr, to be honest, Mr. Dorr's been more. Well, we've been winding each other up for years. I've known him myself. And yeah, he's been telling me, I think we had a bet at one point and I think I lost it. And he said that I owed him and the rest of his gang chicken in either Nando's or Hooters. It was probably going to be the second one though, Mr. Dorr. But no, it's a great thing to do, speaking to fans, up and down the country. And likewise, I wish Fulham the very, very best of luck. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you can win the EFL Cup against Chelsea. Yeah, if Middlesbrough get through, I'm sure you'll take it anyway if you beat them.
Oh, yeah.
But no, mate, honestly, thank you so much for coming on, and it's been an absolute pleasure again.
No problem. Thank you for having me, and speak to you next time.
Yep, definitely. Speak to you later on in the season, Alan. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on this show. Please remember to hit the like, the subscribe, the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Do also remember we've got lots of interviews. Maybe you might be bored on Christmas Day and want to watch, say, for example, Steve Fletcher, Sean Teal, Steve Cook, Harry Redknapp, Luther Blizzett, you name them, we've got them. But also do check out all of the rest of our content. And remember, we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, we're on Apple Music, where you can imagine that we will be. We are. So do check out those and subscribe to us on those platforms as well. But until the next one, have a lovely Christmas, and we'll see you, of course, for this Spurs game. Up the cherries, and hopefully have a very cherry Christmas.